Have you ever wondered why some people seem genuinely happy no matter what life throws at them? It's not luck, money, or status. It's the small habits they practice every single day. These are simple actions that transform their mindset, protect their peace, and build lasting joy. In this video, we'll reveal 7 small but powerful habits that the happiest people do daily, backed by the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. By the end, you'll discover how to start living with intention, gratitude, and calm even in the chaos of modern life. Number 1. They start the day with intention, not reaction. One of the most effective habits is a straightforward one. It is not the case that the happiest people get up and immediately give up control of their minds. When it comes to notifications, texts, or the general cacophony of the world, they do not rush into it. On the contrary, they pause. They establish a period of silence on their own before anything from the outside begins to have an effect on them. They gain control over the path that their thoughts take as a result of this very simple action. Marcus Aurelius put this into practice each morning by mentally preparing himself for problems and reminding himself that he would be confronted with challenging individuals and unpredictable circumstances. By acting in this manner, he eliminated the element of surprise and managed to preserve his tranquility. By beginning each day with a specific goal in mind, you are no longer reacting to life. Rather, you are helping to direct it. The tone for all that comes after can be established with as little as a few moments of calm thought, deep breathing, or mental clarity before getting started. Mostly due to the fact that once your mind is stable, the world has less power to interfere with you. However, take a look at the way the majority of people live. As soon as they open their eyes, their thoughts are interrupted. There are multiple directions in which their attention is drawn by notifications. Comparison is a constant presence in their minds because to social media, even before the day has begun, anxiety is injected into the system by news feeds. They do not even realize that they are allowing the outside environment to determine the status of their feelings and emotions. The person's disposition transforms into a reaction, their concentration becomes disorganized, and their sense of control gradually dissipates. And this is where the true distinction starts to emerge. Those who are the happy are those who are aware of the fact that the first few minutes of the day are not merely minutes. Rather, they constitute a foundation. Whatever you let into your mind over this period of time does not simply pass through. Rather, it stays with you. By doing so, it molds your ideas, has an effect on your feelings, and establishes a pattern that continues to repeat itself throughout the day. If you start off distracted, you will continue to be distracted throughout the event. When you start out in a tranquil state, you are able to carry that calm with you throughout the day. Morning was a time of day that the Stoics considered to be a type of mental training. It was highlighted by Epictetus that you must take responsibility for your thoughts before anything else. This is because once your mind is controlled by external factors, you lose the ability to respond in a wise manner. Rather from beginning with action, he believed that the first step toward discipline is awareness, which means being cognizant of what comes into your mind and how it molds you. Consider the power that is within that. Prior to the world having the opportunity to have an effect on you, you make the decision of who you are going to be. You are not waiting to find out what kind of day you will have. Rather, you are determining how you will experience that day with your expectations. Mornings that are intentionally planned are not about productivity. Rather, they are about establishing one's personality. In those first moments of silence, you are making a decision about your frame of mind. The fact that today will be filled with difficulties, interruptions, and uncertainty is something that you are reminding yourself of. Nevertheless, you are not taken off guard since you have prepared yourself. When you anticipate a challenge, it loses its power to unsettle you since you have prepared yourself for it. Marcus Aurelius once pondered that when you wake up, you should remind yourself that you will encounter people who are unpleasant, ungrateful, or selfish. He said this in a reflection, not to become pessimistic, but rather to develop a resilient mindset. When you anticipate these occurrences, you are not taken aback by them when they occur. When you are not surprised, you are able to maintain control of the situation. This strategy possesses a strength that is not immediately obvious. Removing emotional volatility is the result. In its stead, readiness is substituted for reaction. In addition, the exercise itself does not call for anything particularly harsh. simply sitting in silence for a few minutes, concentrating on your breath, or asking yourself a single question: what sort of person will I be today? Regardless of what happens, can be all that is required to accomplish this. This question causes you to change your focus from the outcomes of the outside world to your own behavior. This directs your attention to the things that are within your control, which is where it should be. In the long run, this routine will build something more profound than simply a peaceful morning routine. You will develop a more consistent character as a result. You become less impetuous, less reactive, and less dependent on the circumstances that you find yourself in. Due to the fact that your basis is no longer external but rather internal, your feelings will no longer fluctuate in response to the events that occur in your environment. In this moment, the beginnings of genuine bliss begin to take shape, simply because happiness is not the result of having days that are perfect. It is the outcome of having a mind that is stable. A mind that is stable is not generated in the midst of disorder. Rather, it is created before the chaos ever begins to have any effect. You are not only making your morning better when you begin your day with a determination to accomplish something. Your mind is being trained to remain steady in a world that is constantly trying to tug you in different directions. You are training your mind to do this consistently. The moment you have mastery of that, everything will change. You refrain from reacting. Choosing is the first step. As a result of making that decision, you will start to experience a different type of life, one that is not governed by the world, but rather is molded by your own awareness. Number 2, they practice gratitude in the smallest moments. The ability to discover thankfulness in everyday situations is the second habit that one should cultivate. Until a significant event takes place, the majority of individuals do not permit themselves to experience feelings of gratitude. They feel that appreciation should only be expressed in response to significant accomplishments or ideal circumstances. On the other hand, the happy people have a different point of view. They take pleasure in the insignificant things, such as a peaceful morning, a meaningful conversation, or a brief moment of quiet, and they consider these to be sufficient. Seneca cautioned that a person who is always looking for more will never have a sense of wealth. Regardless of how much they have accomplished, this never-ending cycle of desiring can be broken via gratitude. Your attention is shifted from what is lacking to what is already present as a result of this. For the sake of cultivating a deeper sense of appreciation, the Stoics even engaged in the practice of visualizing the loss of things that they cherished. You start to place a higher value on something when you take into account how quickly it could be taken away from you. And as soon as one is aware of this, happiness starts to develop. The fundamental fact, however, is that your mind is hardwired to concentrate on the negative aspects of the situation. In addition to looking for faults and gaps, it also looks for things that are missing. When it comes to modern living, this becomes a source of perpetual dissatisfaction. But in the past, it was quite helpful for survival. Your mind tends to move the target forward quite quickly, regardless of how much progress you make. What used to feel like success is now considered normal, and what was formerly considered normal is now invisible. Because of this, it is essential to make thankfulness a conscious discipline. Individuals who are happy are aware of the fact that if they do not train their attention, it will automatically default to a negative state. Therefore, they develop the habit of noticing, which they do on purpose, on a consistent basis and without waiting for the conditions to be ideal. What's missing today is not a question that they ask. The question that they pose is, what is already here that I have been ignoring? This alteration may appear to be insignificant, but it has a profound impact, mostly due to the fact that your emotional state will alter as your focus shifts. Despite being in the same place and with the same people, you can have an entirely different experience of life simply because of the things that you choose to concentrate on while you are there. When Epictetus emphasized that it is not the events themselves that worry us, but rather our judgments about them, he made this point abundantly obvious. In order to reshape those judgments, gratitude is a means to do so. Rather than denying reality, it enables you to see more of it, which in turn enables you to reconstrue the situations you find yourself in. The majority of people fail to recognize the extent of thankfulness at this point. The act of pretending that everything is well is not the point. Having the awareness to recognize that even in the midst of imperfection, there is still something meaningful to be found. Even the most trying of days can teach us something valuable. Despite the tension, one might still find strength in the situation. Problems can bring to light the things that are actually important. To express gratitude, the Stoics did not wait for the perfect circumstances to arise. Because of the unpredictability of life, they made thankfulness a habit. They were aware that everything the individual had, including their health, their relationships, and their time, is only fleeting. Because of this, rather than being afraid of the reality, they made use of it to heighten their enjoyment. On numerous occasions, Seneca pondered the rapidity with which fortune might shift. It is possible that all you have at one moment could be taken away from you at the next. It was not the intention of this awareness to induce worry. Rather, it was intended to bring about clarity, because once you have a complete comprehension of the precarious nature of life, you will no longer delay expressing gratitude. "I'll be grateful when" is no longer something you say. It is then that you begin to realize there is something for which you should be grateful right now. People who are the joyful manage to incorporate this awareness into even the most minute aspect of their day. You won't find them rushing through moments as if they have no significance. They pause even for a moment in order to acknowledge them. For example, the warmth of sunlight, the comfort of rest, and the presence of someone who cares are not extraordinary occurrences. Nevertheless, when they are brought to people's attention, they take on a significant impact. In addition, this exercise has a dramatic effect over the course of time. The baseline is rewired as a result. When you wake up, you no longer feel as though you are lacking anything, but rather that you have plenty of what you need. Instead of always looking for the next item, you start to appreciate the things that are currently within your reach that you already have. The agitated energy that used to drive you begins to settle into something more tranquil and more rooted in reality. Your ambition is not diminished as a result of this. In other words, your aspirations are no longer motivated by a sense of emptiness. This is a purpose-driven endeavor. The reason for this is that appreciation does not make you passive. Rather, it makes you present. Further, when you are present, you are able to participate with life to a greater extent. You are able to experience times more profoundly. You have a more genuine connection with other people. Because of this, happiness is no longer something that you are working toward achieving in the forthcoming time. It transforms into something that you are taking part in experiencing in the here and now. Furthermore, the most potent aspect of this habit is that it does not require anything from the outside world. In order to put it into practice, you do not require additional success, more money, or more recognition. Awareness is all that is required. The consciousness of what is already present, recognizing the things that you already own. This is the realization of something that you once desired, but that is now a part of your life. Something transforms in a way that is less noticeable but more durable when that awareness becomes a regular habit. You no longer have the impression that life is lacking, and all of a sudden you realize it has been sufficient from the beginning. Number 3, they protect their energy from negativity. Maintaining a healthy mental energy level is the third habit. The most content individuals are aware of the fact that their minds are influenced by everything that they allow into them. Conversations, circumstances, and even the substance that kids take in all contribute to the formation of their thoughts. At the same time, when other people get into pointless conflicts or surround themselves with negative people, they make thoughtful decisions. Epictetus believed that repeated impressions shape character, which means that anything you expose yourself to on a constant basis becomes a part of who you are. This is the reason why limits are so important. If you want to protect your energy, you should not try to avoid reality. Rather, you should refuse to devote attention to things that do not really deserve it. There are some opinions that do not necessitate a reaction, and there are other situations that do not warrant their emotional engagement. Negativity can be limited, which creates space for clarity and calmness in your life. It is in that area that happiness has the potential to exist. However, the more fundamental issue is that the majority of individuals are unaware of the extent to which their energy is being depleted. The event does not take place entirely at once. Small, almost undetectable ways are the ones that it occurs. A debate that serves no use here. A talk that was unfavorable there. There is a never-ending cycle of scrolling through stuff that causes feelings of comparison, dissatisfaction, or dread. Over the course of time, these seemingly insignificant exposures add up, and before you know it, your mind has become burdened. You are beginning to experience fatigue for no apparent reason. If you do not comprehend the origin, you have feelings of distraction. You experience emotional reactivity without being aware of the factors that have been contributing to it. Negativity operates in this manner. It tends to not make a loud announcement about itself. Your thinking is gradually reshaped as it creeps in stealthily and gradually. The most content individuals are aware of this fact. They view their attention as something of value, and they do not consider it something that can be freely given away, mostly due to the fact that they are aware of a straightforward notion. Wherever your concentration goes, your energy follows. The direction in which your energy is directed is where your life starts to take shape. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself to protect his mind from any unneeded disturbances that could present themselves. He was of the opinion that the color of one's thoughts would eventually become a part of the soul. When you open yourself up to negativity on a regular basis, your inner world will reflect it. However, if you are careful about the thoughts that you choose to think, your mind will become a haven of stability. Because of this, boundaries are not just about other people. Rather, they are about the discipline that you have for yourself. The statement that something is negative is a simple one to make. The decision to not engage with it is more difficult to make, because of the innate tendency of the mind to be pulled to drama, conflict, and stimulation sources. It is attempting to react. It is attempting to demonstrate a point. There is a want to be heard. Those who are the happiest, however, do not give in to every impulse. They pause for a moment. They pose a straightforward inquiry to themselves. Is it wise to expend my energy on this? However, the majority of the time the response is no. Your opinion is not required in every discussion. Each and every critique does not require your defense. You are not required to get involved in every circumstance. The hazards of being constantly surrounded by negative influences were brought to Seneca's attention, and he explained that even powerful people can be influenced by the company they keep. This is the reason why the environment is so important. Your mental state is influenced by a number of factors, including the people you spend time with, the conversations you have, and the material from which you take in information. Being subjected to negativity on a consistent basis could cause it to become the norm. Your expectations will be shaped by it. It has an effect on the way you perceive the world. Nevertheless, something shifts when you start to filter the information that comes into your head. Your ideas start to become more distinct. Your feelings become more consistent with time. You are able to exert more control over your reactions. As time goes on, you come to the realization that tranquility is not something you discover. Rather, it is something you guard. When it comes to this protection, isolation is not the focus. It all comes down to intention. Even the happiest people continue to interact with the outside world. Despite this, they continue to encounter obstacles, challenging individuals, and unsettling circumstances. On the other hand, they do not permit these things to take control of their thoughts. It is not that they absorb them, rather they experience them. Clearly there is a variation. Negativity is something that you retain with you long after the moment has passed if you allow it to be absorbed. It entails rehashing discussions, harboring resentment, and allowing insignificant occurrences to have a significant impact on your entire day. On the other hand, control can be achieved by observing negativity without allowing it to consume one. It makes it possible for you to maintain your composure in circumstances that might typically agitate you. Because of this, you are able to respond rather than react. It makes it possible for you to move forward without carrying any weight that is not necessary. This routine makes a significant change during the course of time. Your sensitivity to noise from the outside world decreases. It is time to stop squandering your energy on things that are irrelevant. You cultivate a sense of inner stability that is resistant to being shaken by external forces. And this is the point at which the sensation of bliss starts to change. It is no longer fragile and does not require ideal circumstances to function properly. It transforms into something stable and something that is protected. You are not only avoiding negativity when you learn to guard your energy, you are also protecting yourself from it. You are creating a space in which peace can permeate. Number 4, they focus on progress, not perfection. Putting an emphasis on making progress rather than striving for perfection is the 4th habit. A great number of people are under constant strain because they are under the impression that they must be perfect in every way. Every error feels like a debacle, and every single delay feels like slipping farther and further behind. This way of thinking is not shared by the happiest individuals. It is clear to them that development occurs in stages. Seneca frequently highlighted the importance of constant improvement. which serves to remind us that wisdom is not acquired all at once, but rather gradually. By concentrating on making progress, you give yourself permission to continue forward without being afraid, not as roadblocks, but as opportunities for learning and growth. The significance of each incremental improvement grows. Because of this, momentum is created, and momentum is what gives purpose. You no longer have feelings of being stuck or overwhelmed. Rather, you feel involved in the process of improving yourself. In addition, the feeling of motion gives about a tranquil and long-lasting sort of happiness. Perfection, however, comes with a hidden cost that the majority of people fail to recognize. It holds you stuck. It results in hesitancy prior to action, uncertainty while action is being taken, and dissatisfaction following operation. At this point, you start to overanalyze every action because you are afraid that it won't be satisfactory. Furthermore, as a result of this dread, you either put off beginning the process or give up on it too soon. This is how progress is subtly stifled by the pursuit of perfection. Individuals who are the happiest are those who are aware that perfection is not a norm, but rather an illusion. There is no ultimate point at which everything may be considered perfect. Movement, adjustability, and unending development are the only things that exist. According to Epictetus, you should not insist that things occur in the manner that you desire. Rather, you should hope that they occur in the manner that they do, and your life will go well. Accepting the imperfect nature of growth rather than fighting against it is what it signifies when applied in this context. When you give up trying to fix things that aren't perfect, you give yourself permission to go on. This adjustment has a large impact, mostly due to the fact that when you concentrate on achieving progress, you eliminate the fear of errors. Rather than viewing mistakes as something that defines you, you begin to view them as something that teaches you the lessons you need to learn. Every single step, even the ones that are incorrect, is incorporated into the process. And as a result, your relationship with effort adapts accordingly. As an alternative to asking, "Is this perfect?" you start by asking, "Is this better than yesterday?" This question establishes a consistent pattern. It keeps you moving, even on days when you don't feel like doing anything at all. You are able to take baby steps without feeling overwhelmed by the distance that lies ahead of you for this reason. And over the course of time, those seemingly insignificant actions add up to something important, not as a sudden burst of tremendous effort, but rather as a consistent daily practice. The Stoics believed that discipline should be practiced. A reminder was sent to Marcus Aurelius to concentrate solely on the task that was in front of him, to complete it successfully, and then to move on to the next one. He did not make an effort to exert control over the overall outcome. Rather, he concentrated on the action that was taking place at the moment. That is the core of what constitutes progress. It is not your intention to become an expert in everything at once. At this moment, you are simply focusing your complete concentration on doing what you can, where you are. Furthermore, this method alleviates a significant mental stress. The pursuit of perfection is a source of pressure because it compels you to continually consider the outcome of your efforts. Making progress is a source of relief because it helps you to refocus your attention on the here and now. It enables you to focus on what you are doing rather than worrying about the outcome of what you are doing. This inspires confidence throughout the course of time. This is not the kind of self-assurance that comes from being perfect. Rather, it is the kind of self-assurance that comes from knowing that you are able to deal with mistakes, adapt, and keep going forward. The fact that you have seen the results of constant effort has given you the confidence to trust the process. From this point on, the connection between growth and happiness becomes clear. The reason for this is that when you are focused on development, you are no longer waiting for a final result to have a sense of fulfillment. In the process of bettering oneself, you discover a sense of fulfillment. Every little victory, every new experience, and every stride forward transforms into a source of success and satisfaction. You are no longer a slave to the notion that happiness is a consequence of succeeding in something. During the course of the process, you start to actually feel it. The fact that it is sustainable is what makes it so, since there is always a subsequent action to take. Always, there is something that can be made better. Continuous motion can be observed. As soon as you let go of the idea of perfection, you cease stifling your own potential. And when you accept progress, you begin to go forward with less fear, more clarity, and a deeper feeling of purpose that silently builds a sort of enjoyment that lasts for a long time. Number 5. They spend time with themselves without distraction. Learning how to be alone without being distracted is the fifth habit to develop. In a world where there is constant noise, the majority of people try to avoid silence because it compels them to confront their own ideas and emotions within themselves. As a means of urgently avoiding discomfort, they spend every bit of free time with activities such as scrolling, conversing, or amusement. On the other hand, the happiest people act in antithesis. They make a conscious effort to set aside time for time alone with themselves. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius held the belief that the mind itself is a sanctuary, a place of refuge where one can discover genuine calm and clarity. They are able to make the space to watch their thoughts rather than being carried along by them when they give themselves permission to be present and quiet. They become aware of sentiments, urges, and patterns that occur again. They gain the power to select their responses rather than being controlled by their natural reactions, and this control helps them build a deeper and more stable happiness. This awareness provides them the ability to choose their replies. Because they are afraid of what they may discover when they are alone, the majority of people never establish this habit. Anxiety, insecurity, remorse, or unresolved emotions are some of the difficult realities that can be revealed through silence. Flaws and patterns that we would rather overlook can be brought to light by it. In situations where there are no distractions, the mind will bring to the forefront anything that has been overlooked, which can be a disturbing experience. Because of this, individuals try to escape suffering by filling every emptiness with noise, activity, or entertainment that is superficial. In the beginning, it appears to be harmless and even pleasant. However, over time, it interferes with growth. They are unable to sit with themselves, so they continue to respond to the world around them. They are always looking for satisfaction or comfort from outside sources, and they are ignorant that the turmoil they experience on the inside is something they have made for themselves. Solitude, on the other hand, is something that the happiest individuals approach as a practice, a discipline. It is clear to them that confronting their own thoughts is not a form of punishment, but rather a means to achieve liberation. According to Epictetus, a person cannot be considered genuinely free until they have achieved mastery over themselves. Self-mastery, on the other hand, starts with awareness, which is something that can only come about when we give ourselves permission to study our own thoughts without any forms of interference. The individual is able to convert their interior environment from one of chaos into one of order by openly confronting their ideas and feelings. Begin this technique in a subtle manner. When you initially sit in silence, you could experience feelings of restlessness. My mind is always moving from one subject to another. You will be more likely to be prompted to check your phone, chat, or divert yourself. Those are the habitual defenses that the mind employs in order to fight against the discipline of present. However, the restlessness will lessen as you continue to practice consistently. You start to become aware of patterns in your thoughts, such as recurrent anxieties, persistent fears, and judgments that keep coming back to you. In addition, once these patterns are identified, it is possible to comprehend and control them properly. It is possible to change what is witnessed, but this can only happen if it is seen in its entirety. Seneca emphasized the significance of retreating into oneself, not as a means of evading the world, but rather as a means of returning to it, equipped with greater capabilities, rationality, and awareness. He saw that a state of constant activity without thinking leads to chaos, whereas a state of deliberate quiet fosters understanding and purpose among individuals. Individuals that are the happiest take this principle very seriously. Their decision to be alone is deliberate. To comprehend oneself and one's place in the world, it is not about isolating oneself. Rather, it is about establishing the mental space that is necessary for this understanding. Therefore, individuals start to become aware of the subtle factors that are having an effect on their conduct. They are able to discern the factors that incite feelings of wrath, impatience, or anxiousness. They are aware of the ideas that have a tendency to result in feelings of concern or uncertainty. Emotional patterns that were previously unregulated are now visible to them. And with this acknowledgement comes the ability to choose. When people are no longer entirely led by impulse or habit, they are able to respond in a manner that is thoughtful, calm, and guided by awareness. Additionally, this activity helps to develop resilience. Once the mind has become accustomed to viewing itself without any interruptions, it will become less reliant on stimuli from the outside world for either comfort or distraction. There is no longer a requirement for continuous entertainment, social approval, or sensory input in order to achieve happiness. A mind that is calm, self-aware, and disciplined is the source of this phenomenon, rather than the other way around. The benefits accumulate over a period of time. Individuals who cultivate this habit observe increased emotional steadiness in their lives. Because of the order that exists within them, they become less reactive to the chaos that exists outside of them. They take use of lucidity rather than impulsive when confronting issues. They are able to have more meaningful interactions with other people since they are not easily distracted or scattered within themselves. Most significantly, they cultivate a sense of contentment that is independent of the situations in which they find themselves. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that he was the only person who could actually be affected by other people's actions if he allowed them to do so. It was through the cultivation of inner awareness through solitude that he made certain that his responses were dictated by reason rather than emotions. This is the essence of the habit, making a conscious decision to spend time with yourself, not because you are lonely, but because you are aware that your internal condition determines how you relate to the world around you. When all is said and done, spending time by oneself without interruptions is not a passive habit. Freedom, clarity, and resiliency are all qualities that a person actively cultivates. Your ability to face discomfort without fear, to watch without judgment, and to respond without being controlled by spontaneous impulses are all skills that you obtain through this training. And it is in that trained quiet that happiness manifests itself, not as a transitory experience, but rather as a stable foundation that supports every other facet of existence. The more you engage in this routine on a regular basis, the more profound the reality you will discover. Tranquility does not come from altering the world around you. Rather, it comes from conquering the world that is within you. And once the mind has achieved mastery over itself, genuine happiness is no longer dependent on anything external. Rather, it becomes something that you consistently carry with you wherever you go. Number 6. They do small acts of kindness without expectation. Being helpful to others without expecting anything in return is the 6th habit that ought to be practiced. People who are the happiest do not wait for great gestures or dramatic events to make an influence on how they feel about themselves. They are aware that the world around them is influenced in ways that are subtle but significant by the modest acts of goodwill that they perform on a consistent basis. Some of the behaviors that have a cumulative effect over time include a thoughtful note or gesture of support, a kind word to a colleague, a moment of patience with a stranger, and a kind word to a colleague. Seneca was of the opinion that genuine acts of kindness should not be contingent on receiving commendation or a reward, and that doing good for other people is an essential component of having a worthwhile life. The fulfillment that you experience is not fragile or conditional when you act without expecting anything in return. Rather, it is something that emerges spontaneously from the act itself. It is no longer necessary for you to wait for affirmation from others in order to feel content. It is the deed itself that earns the prize. The vast majority of people, on the other hand, are caught in the cycle of exchange. Either they give with the expectation of receiving anything in return, or they withhold generosity unless there is a crystal clear benefit. Because life rarely runs on perfect reciprocity, this conditional approach generates tension and disappointment in the lives of those involved. The happiest people, on the other hand, have understood the need of distancing their activities from the results of their actions. They are perceptive enough to realize that the motivation behind the action is of much more significance than the recognition that it receives. Giving without expecting anything in return helps them develop a sense of inner abundance that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. A person's internal reality can also be reshaped by kindness. Your thinking begins to move from being self-centered to being empathic when you show compassion to other people, even if it is only in a tiny degree. One of the most important factors that contributes to happiness is changing one's outlook. Epictetus emphasized that we are social beings and that our well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others who are in our immediate vicinity. Through the act of practicing kindness, you are reminded that your actions have a ripple effect that affects more than just your immediate experience. This confirms the connection I mentioned earlier. Small acts of kindness performed on a regular basis have a cumulative effect. In isolation, each action could appear to be insignificant. Nevertheless, over time, they will develop into a network of positivity that surrounds you. Unconsciously, people react to your actions, and while they may not always do so directly or quickly, they do experience a subtle shift collectively through your actions. This does not imply that happiness is only drawn from the responses of other people. Rather, it indicates that making a positive contribution to your environment also helps to nourish your own sense of purpose and fulfillment. The mentality that underlies the action is another key issue to consider. People that are the happiest do not act out of responsibility or guilt toward others. It is not for the sake of alleviating their own misery or gaining favor that they offer. They exhibit awareness and intention in their actions. This is perfectly in line with the ideas of the Stoics, which state that virtue is the highest good and that it be pursued for its own sake rather than for what it provides in return. Patience, empathy, and integrity are the characteristics that define a meaningful life, and you can strengthen these abilities by demonstrating virtue via acts of kindness. Even if your acts of kindness are not recognized or are met with ingratitude, the impact they have on your own subconscious will continue to be felt. When you take action, your mind registers it. Your heart senses that it is aligned with your values, and you feel a subtle happiness that is unaffected by changes in the environment. To live one's life in accordance with virtue, regardless of praise, criticism, or circumstances, is the essence of Stoic fulfillment. Over the course of time, this routine will produce a calm and long-lasting form of happiness. Every aspect of your life will no longer be centered entirely on what you may get or accomplish. On the contrary, it starts to incorporate the influence that you have on the world and the individuals in your immediate vicinity. Developing a sense of participation which is intrinsically fulfilling is something that you do. Your sense of self as someone who lives a life that is important and meaningful is strengthened by every modest act of kindness you perform. It is also true that acts of kindness have the ability to alleviate the mental burdens that frequently torment us. It is common for feelings of anxiety, animosity, and aggravation to decrease when attention is focused outward, specifically when the focus is placed on assisting, listening to, or comforting another individual. Happiest people create mental space for optimism and calm by doing for the benefit of others. This is how they get happiness. A significant Stoic lesson can be learned by performing modest acts of kindness without expecting anything in return. This lesson is that genuine happiness is not the result of receiving benefits from the outside world, but rather of living in accordance with your highest principles. The kind of fulfillment that is independent of fortune, resistant to criticism, and resilient in the face of hardship is the kind that you experience when your life involves acts that are constant and selfless. It is the kind of fulfillment that you experience. The reason why the happiest individuals are rarely lonely or alienated is because the activities they take on a daily basis build a reality around them that mirrors the virtue and compassion that they nurture within themselves. Because of this, happiness is a result of living a life of intention, practicing virtue, and acknowledging that the tiniest acts frequently have the most weight not for the world, but for the soul that is performing them. Number 7. They end the day with reflection, not regret. Reflection at the end of the day, rather than feeling regret, is the final habit to develop. A significant number of individuals devote their evenings to engaging in self-criticism, rehashing past errors, or fretting about things that they are unable to alter. As they go off to sleep, they carry a heavy mental load with them, ruminating about discussions, decisions, and opportunities that they have missed. This pattern of behavior causes the mind to remain restless, prohibits rest, and reduces the capacity to gain knowledge from experiences. People who are the joyful have a particular way of approaching the end of the day. They get in the habit of reflecting. Seneca explained how he would go through his day, evaluating it each night and asking himself what he had done well and where he could improve. He would do this without passing judgment, but rather with a balanced and honest assessment. Because of this practice, every experience, whether it be a success or a loss, may be turned into a lesson. Rather than bringing sorrow into the future, you bring understanding with you from today. What worked, what didn't work, and what you can alter without feeling the load of shame or self-recrimination are all things that you understand. Reflection is a process that requires both diligence and effort. To observe the day with clarity and detachment is not the same as simply thinking about it. Rather, it is to observe it. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote to himself, prompting him to reflect on his actions, intentions, and emotions. He regarded this introspection as a fundamental component of personal development. In the process of actively analyzing your day, you will start to recognize patterns in your conduct, moments in which your impulses prevailed over reason, and instances in which you responded in a manner that was congruent with your belief system. Over time, this awareness will lead to the development of self-mastery, which will enable you to make better decisions without giving in to feelings of regret. Many people are unable to successfully maintain this habit because they mix reflection with criticism. The criticism is severe, it is frequently repetitious, and it is personal. In contrast, reflection is characterized by its objective, compassionate, and solution-oriented nature. What is it that I can learn from it? What different things may I do the following day? The focus is not on assigning blame or worrying about what should have been done. This disparity is something that the happiest individuals are aware of. Through consistent practice, they learn themselves to view mistakes not as accusations but as feedback. Epictetus underlined that although we do not have control over the events that occur outside of ourselves, we do have power over how we react to them. Reflection at the end of the day is a powerful way to honor that value. It is impossible to change what has already taken place, but you can examine the decisions you have made, make adjustments to your thinking, and get ready for the next day. By taking this attitude, mistakes are transformed from sources of stress into chances for growth, which in turn develops confidence, resilience, and mental calm. When it comes to contemplation, thankfulness is another essential component. Not only do the happy individuals concentrate on ways to improve, but they also take the time to give credit where credit is due. They are able to identify individual instances of patience, kindness, or bravery. They rejoice in the smallest of victories and reflect on the experiences that provided them happiness, insight, or a sense of connection. Through this action, they strike a balance between providing feedback and expressing appreciation, so preventing introspection from becoming a cause of fear or guilt. Moreover, this practice teaches detachment from the results of actions. When you take the time to analyze your day in an objective manner, you will start to realize that your failures do not define you, and that your accomplishments are fleeting. The process, the effort, and the degree to which it aligns with your ideals are that which are important. You can liberate yourself from the captivity of perfectionism, comparison, and regret by shifting your focus from the results that are external to the behavior that you engage in internally. The mind can be rewired over time by making it a habit to conclude each day with reflection rather than regret. As time goes on, you start to recognize patterns before they become problems. You modify behaviors with a calm intention, and you approach challenges with greater clarity. Rather than being restless, nights gradually become restorative. There is no longer any reoccurring failures or worry about things that are beyond your control that are disrupting your sleep. And it is easier to get up since the mind is ready to act with intention rather than being burdened by the mistakes that were made the day before. On a fundamental level, this routine completes the cycle of daily living. The most contented individuals begin each day with a sense of purpose rather than a sense of reaction, and they also end each day with a sense of understanding rather than a sense of guilt. The cycle of aware action, honest evaluation, and deliberate growth becomes a part of each and every day. Using this cycle, one can construct a solid basis for happiness that is not dependent on ephemeral circumstances, but rather on the mental fortitude that has been gradually developed. Through the constant practice of this habit, you will be able to achieve something that very few people ever get the opportunity to experience: clarity of self, peace of conscience, and the ability to move forward with relaxed confidence. Because it is not based on luck or acceptance from others, but rather on your own self-disciplined contemplation and comprehension, happiness may be maintained throughout time thanks to this foundation. You acquire the ability to live each day to its fullest, to learn without experiencing harm, and to carry forth the knowledge that you have acquired, all without the burden of regret bringing you down. There is no such thing as a distant or complicated concept as happiness. It develops in a stealthy manner through the daily practice of a few simple routines. The Stoics held the belief that there is no such thing as a perfect life. Problems, ambiguity, and shifts in circumstances are unavoidable in the future. That being said, they were also aware of the fact that your internal environment can remain stable regardless of what occurs in the outside world. These 7 routines are not particularly noteworthy, yet the influence they have is significant. The way you think, the way you react, and the way you experience life are all influenced by them. Something starts to shift when you start your day with a purpose, when you show gratitude for what you already own, when you safeguard your energy, when you concentrate on making progress, when you embrace silence, when you practice kindness, and when you reflect at night. The alteration in your mentality occurs gradually and virtually unconsciously. Additionally, when you alter your mentality, your experience of life also shifts in response. As a result of beginning to create happiness in the here and now, you will no longer be pursuing happiness in the future, and at precise instant, happiness is no longer something you are looking for. Rather, it is something that you experience on a daily basis,